What's your 1 unit play?
All right, 1 unit.
This was almost one of mine, by the way.
I'm gonna look at a total team that's near and dear to your heart. Who we haven't even really touched on that whole situation from Friday night. So the Colts traveling to Green Bay to face the Packers. I'm gonna take under 40.5. Obviously, the Packers dealing with a quarterback situation with Jordan Love out.
Maybe.
LaFleur
left the door open.
Yeah.
Probably not going to play, though.
Yeah, I would be very shocked if he was in there.
Malik Willis time, yeah.
But by and large, good news. Like when he went down, it was
there's nothing worse than I don't mean I'm sorry, but like I went to bed being like my football season might be over, and it's September 5th or whatever it was. Like this sucks,
there was a 2-minute stretch there where I went from his season's done and by extension the Packers Super Bowl hopes are done to he's fine. He might not even miss any time because like after he finally got up, like sure there was he was limping around.
Yeah.
But I'm like, he's fine for next week. And now we just kind of met in the middle. So
it was a bad spot too. Oh, this is the other thing. Going back to my weekend, I literally I don't feel proud about this. Literally on more than one occasion during my run, like through the woods, I pulled out my phone and was checking to see if there were any updates on Jordan Love. So the fact that they had to go do that on Friday night in Brazil and like they really couldn't get a good answer until like 24 hours later is not a good sign for the future of the Brazil game.
Depressing flights.
Ugh.
Like, you know, you hear about all the time in sports, like if you're on a road trip in baseball or something, and it's like coming back from Brazil to Green Bay is what, like 10 and a half, 11 hours? Yeah. That, just losing a game, just losing your starting quarterback. Ugh.
One time I flew back from Vegas extremely hungover, like a 7 a.m. flight. It's just like the anxiety I had for the entire cross-country flight. This has to be
Nashville, and I was a middle seat.
Oh,
dude, I was sweating buckets.
So like this guy doesn't know if his season's done. Just like his mind must have been racing. Anyway, 40.5 is the number.
40.5, yeah. So I mean, all right. So obviously, the most important factor in this whole thing is the quarterback situation for Green Bay. Malik Willis, it sounds like, is getting the start. Nothing he did in Tennessee impressed me.
Right.
That offense was non-existent anytime he was in there. I mentioned the travel factor. Like, you get the extra 2 days having played on Friday night, but like that's mitigated by the 11-hour flight or whatever it is. So, got to factor that in. Also, it's like this is why I don't like that travel in week one. Like these guys are still getting their legs under them. I think you saw that in a lot of games this past weekend, where towards the end of games, defenses look gassed. Anyways. So there's all of that. I also just think Indy's offense, I'm not sure they're going to be able to sustain the pace they had in week one. I mean, they had...
That one touchdown was sick.
The Anthony Richardson off his back foot. That was... Sorry, so that...
So I think that... But, like, that's what I remember from that game, so it's like...
There's traveled 65 air yards, which is the third longest throw that they've tracked in the Next Gen Stats database, which goes back to 2016. But, like, the other two were... running into it, Hail Marys. This was like off his back foot. Insane. But also insane. Averaged 23.6 yards per completion. Like, gotta think that's not gonna happen again this week. Average 7 yards per play. That's probably gonna come down. So I just expect fewer explosive pass plays from them. Probably more ball control tempo. Lead into Jonathan Taylor. I think he had like 16 carries in week one. So I just think the pace is gonna be a little bit slower for this one. Coupled with, the Packers could bottom out offensively. 40.5, that in today's NFL, when you're talking about, like backup quarterbacks and things of that nature, that's not low enough to turn me off. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think you look at Joe Mixon ran all over Indy last week. I think the Packers try to do the same thing with Josh Jacobs this week. I think he gets 30, 35 carries. That clock just... running clock. Let's just keep it moving.
I think Green Bay's defense is going to step up a little bit this week, too.
I was talking to a couple of people out in the newsroom earlier. They were asking me what I thought of it. And, like, it didn't look great. And the numbers are very bad, actually, like especially the advanced stuff. I never felt the same way that I did watching Joe Barry's defense last year at any point during that game. It was frustrating, obviously, when they couldn't get stopped. But you're playing a very talented offense. You're playing on a field that nobody can get their footing on. You're playing week one of a new guy's system. Like... get them home against a less talented team I think they're going to look a little better. If not, then it's time to panic. But you got to think a little bit of course correction, and that if that's the case, then yeah, you're playing a slugfest.
What do you make of the fact that they are turning to somebody like Malik Willis and not having a viable backup like some other teams? Like, should they have done more in maybe the offseason? Like, I know this is an injury that you can't really account for. It's not like it was very fluky in nature, but like, do you think that Green Bay should have had a better contingency plan or should go out and get somebody?
On the first one, yeah, probably, because they traded for him like at the end of camp, so it's not a guy that they had in their building the entire training camp. I think for the latter, you want a major flip or spin zone. Like, I think it's a good thing that they didn't go out and get. I would have loved to see him get Tannehill just because he's got that. I don't think he actually ever played with LaFleur, but like it's the same system. The fact that they didn't go out and do that tells me that they aren't overly concerned about Love. So I think that points to Love probably returning sooner than maybe people think. They didn't put him on IR. Yep. So I think you look at their schedule too. They play Indy this week. I think they've got Minnesota coming up. Tennessee is in there. Some winnable game, like just
weather the storm now.
2-2 and get out. I don't know if they can do that with Malik Willis, but you're gonna have to win a couple ugly games here. But even if they're 1-3, that's not the end of their season. I don't think so.
Yeah, it's a good point. How they've handled this entire situation speaks more about Jordan Love's status probably than how they feel about Malik Willis or their quarterback room in general.
And I also think too they're a relatively good team. I think they're good. They're well coached. Those types of teams usually perform really well their first week with a backup because it's just the floor is so high. So we'll see. I don't know. My what are we on?
1 unit.
1 unit. Sorry. I'm taking the under in the Jets Titans game. The total is 42. I guess I'm buying both of these defenses. For Tennessee specifically, we talked about this. They completely dominated defensively last week. They held Chicago to 2.8 yards per play. That's 32nd in the league. 25th in EPA per play. The Bears offense was. Chicago scored a punt return, an interception return, or a punt block, return, an interception return. They had 3 field goals, including 2 of 48 yards or more. That tells me they didn't really move the ball down the field at all. They only got in the red zone once. Tennessee's offense isn't great either, so that points to an under as well. They averaged 4 yards per play. That was 27th. They were 25th in EPA per play. I think we were talking about, I was trying to do some running back stuff earlier. The Jets defense certainly didn't impress, but, I mean, this is a different universe going from playing the Niners to playing the Titans, playing Will Levis as opposed to what Brock Purdy has done in that system. I like what the Titans have for weapons. I don't think it necessarily matches up to what the 49ers did. I think you go back and look at that game, the Niners ran all over the Jets. The run defense was a major issue. I don't know if the Titans run game is going to be as strong as the Niners were, so I think the Jets defense should look a little bit better. It is a weird schedule spot for the Jets, though. 2 straight road games. They also have a Thursday night game lingering, so I do wonder how good they'll look on either side of the ball, but especially offensively. You look at the offense, too. Like, Rodgers showed signs of it last week, that it's still there, which was kind of cool to see. Also showed a lot of the stuff that we saw late in the year in his final season in Green Bay. We're still not entirely sure what he's going to do offensively.
That free play touchdown was like classic Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, so like, but like, I don't want to discredit it, but it was a free play at the end of the day.
No, that was like the good Aaron Rodgers. Yeah. Like the wherewithal to snap it and go for that.
Which is a credit to him, but you also can't bank on that week to week.